Welcome back to Ghost Pirate Entertainment. I'm your host, Kanan Becker, and today we talk about 10 of the scariest horror movies right now on Shudder. And with that, let's get to the list. What did you do?
Night of the Reaper, huh? Kinda catchy.
Night of the Reaper is a 2025 slasher horror movie. Directed by Brandon Christensen, it stars Jessica Clement, Ryan Robbins, and Keegan Connor Tracy. A college student agrees to babysit the son of a sheriff who's dealing with a mystery involving snuff films delivered to him. So this is a brand new one I just checked out earlier today, and I was really surprised because yes, it is a very small movie. You got to go into this not expecting too much from it because it's just not that kind of movie. But it does take some risk and chances and goes places I was not expecting. It's also got a lot of originality to it because for a genre that's been done to death, I mean, we've seen slasher horror movies done every way you can possibly think of. It's really exciting when there is one that's able to have a new wrinkle and add something interesting to the conversation, and this one definitely does. Besides that, it gets really intense and has a lot of twists and turns that keeps you entertained all the way to the very end. I also really like how it has so much atmosphere to it, so I think it's a really great pick for this time of year. It's just moody and creepy and ominous. But I think for a small budget slasher, this one packs a big punch. And as long as you keep your expectations in check, I think you'll have a great time with it.
No tiene que tener sangre en las manos, no en este lugar. A estos seres les gusta la sangre.
Terrified is a 2017 Argentinian supernatural horror movie. Written and directed by Demian Rugna, it stars George Lewis, Max Milano Gioni, and Natalia Cinerales. The story's about paranormal researchers who investigate strange events in a neighborhood in Buenos Aires.
Esto implica que nosotros tres vamos a dividirnos en cada una de las casas donde creemos que ocurren los fenómenos paranormales.
So I've been raving about this movie for a few years now because as far as scary, creepy, supernatural horror movies go, this is about as good as it gets. It's definitely one of the best in the last 10 years or so because I can genuinely say this one is scary. Just some of the visuals, the way it sets up things, the mood, the atmosphere, it pulls you along and does everything in just a slightly unique way, so nothing feels normal. Nothing feels like anything you're used to. And I'm a big fan of that because it's not like every horror movie can reinvent the wheel. But if you're able to add some new wrinkles and do things to make your movie just feel different, have a different vibe, a different feel and mood overall, that goes a long way. And this one definitely does. So if you've never seen Terrified, do yourself a favor and make this the next thing that you watch. Kill List is a 2011 British psychological horror movie. Directed by Ben Wheatley, it stars Neil Maskell, Mayanna Buring, and Michael Smiley. 8 years after a disastrous job in Kiev left him physically and mentally scarred, an ex-soldier turned contract killer is pressured into taking a new assignment.
They're bad people. They should suffer.
This is such a surprising movie. I've talked about it before because it's one of my favorites as far as a movie that feels like it's two different movies in a lot of ways. Because for the first half of this movie, you're going along and watching this, and it feels much more like a drama thriller where you're watching these contract killers basically doing their job. And it gets violent, it gets brutal, and it does a lot of things with that. But then it takes a shift, and I don't want to say anything about that because if you haven't seen this, it is so much fun to be blindsided by what it does. But it goes in a really crazy, demented, disturbing direction that is full of surprises and creepiness. But this is a bleak one, a very dark movie, so it's not going to work necessarily for everyone. But if you're a fan of psychological horror movies, ones that really mess with your head and do things in a very disturbing way, this is one you definitely need to see.
So who wants to try first?
Crumb Catcher is a 2023 horror thriller written and directed by Chris Scatchpold in his feature film debut. It stars Ella Ray Peck, Rigo Garay, and John Sperticos. A newlywed couple is held captive in a remote lake house by a maniacally optimistic inventor and his sour wife, who are desperate to finance his dream project.
This thing will knock your socks off.
So I literally just got done watching this and then basically hit record on this video. And what a weird, entertaining movie this is. It's really heart-pounding, intense, and an absolute pressure cooker because it starts off uncomfortable and strange and feels very awkward and just weird. But then as things go, it gets more and more intense, and I could just not look away from the screen because it does such a great job of building the intensity of the situation. But holy hell, the performance from John Sperticos is incredible. He is so weird and off-putting, but fun to watch. He's one of my favorite horror characters, thriller characters I've seen in a minute because he's just so much fun in his performance here. He's extremely demented, but in a way that is very entertaining to watch. And there's definitely some bleak, dark humor in this, but ultimately, as things really go towards the end, it gets less and less humorous and more just intense and scary. Because the main couple here, you like them even though they're so flawed and really not probably right for each other. But the performances from them is so good that you just can't help yourself. You're rooting for them. And so then as things get more and more hairy and intense, you're really rooting for them, but at the same time, it just gets batshit crazy. But this is not what I would say is a true blue horror movie, but much more of a home invasion, strange, darkly humorous thriller. But it does get a lot more horror, especially like I said in the final act when it really goes for it. So if you're looking for something that's unique, strange, and odd, that definitely marches to the beat of its own drum, definitely add this one to your list. Belzebuth is a 2017 Mexican horror movie directed by Emilio Portes. It stars Joaquin Cosio, Tobin Bell, and Tate Ellington. After a personal tragedy, a police detective investigates a series of child massacres that may be linked to a demon possession. So I watched this for the first time a couple months ago and talked about it on a Tubi list, but I think this movie is so good and very slept on. So when I saw that it was also available on Shudder, I had to throw it on this list because this movie is disturbing, dark, bleak, demented, but also terrifying as hell, especially towards the end. Besides that, the performance here from Tobin Bell is so unique and different than anything I've really seen him do before. So it's worth seeing just to see what he does in this. But there is some really out there visuals and things that happen. It's definitely not a movie that's going to be for everyone, because if you're someone that can't handle any child death in a movie at all, then you really probably should avoid this one, because not only do kids die, I mean, they're straight up massacred at times in this. That's kind of the whole crux of the setup of this movie. But I just love how much this movie goes for it in every way. The visuals, the props, the practical effects. It has some of the most unique looking things. One thing in particular that just really sticks out for me with the things and the way this movie looks. But I'm also just such a big fan of Mexican horror. They really push the envelope, and they don't worry so much about, is this movie going to have mass appeal? In a lot of ways, they just make their movie. A lot of other countries in general are that way. And a lot of us in Western culture sometimes will shy away from things because of money, straight up. You know, we need to pay for these movies to get made, and people are trying to make a buck. I get it. And so because of that, you'll shy away from stuff. But in these other cultures, I don't know exactly how or why or how all that works out, but they're able to push the limits and do things that are not going to necessarily be a popular type of thing in a movie, but they work. If you're a big fan of horror and like to see movies push the boundaries and really go for it. But don't get me wrong, I'm not a fan of movies that are shock for shock's sake. But if it's part of the story and narrative and there's a reasoning behind it, and it happens to be something that's unique and yet really disturbing, dark, and uncomfortable, like killing kids or religious, sacrilegious things or whatever it may be, I'm all for it. But only if it serves the story. And this is a perfect example of that, because I don't think anything they do in this is just to shock you. There's a reasoning behind it. And especially towards the end of this, it all makes sense on why the things happen the way they do and why they do and make some of the choices they do in this. But I'm a big fan of this movie. I really am. I think it's fantastic. So if you've never seen this and you're a fan of foreign horror like I am, definitely give this one a look. Candyland is a 2022 horror movie, written and directed by John Schwab. It stars Owen Campbell, Olivia Liccardi, and Sam Quertin. A seemingly naive and devout young woman finds her way into the underground world of truck stop sex workers. But soon after she arrives, things take a dark and twisted turn.
What are you doing back here? Are you okay?
Who's this?
She's from that weirdo cult.
I think they're gonna leave for heaven before the rest of us.
I've been praising this movie since when it came out. It was in my top 10 of the year. That's how good I think this movie is. It's one of those that's definitely not going to work for everyone, and that's why you don't hear more people talking about it, because this movie is very dark, very uncomfortable, really disturbing, gets graphic in a lot of different ways, not just with gore and violence, but with sexual things as well. But it has a lot to say, and it really does a great job of conveying those messages about sex and religion and the judgment of others and things like that. I mean, there's really a lot here, but it's also a really dark and twisted movie. But for a lot of the runtime, it's much more of an uncomfortable watch, a lot more of a movie that feels like there's dread in it and things like that, but not necessarily over the top horror. But in the final act, this movie absolutely goes for it and gets so fucked up. But as much as I think it's not one that's going to work for everyone, I still think it deserves a lot more attention than it gets, because I know a lot of people out there that are into indie horror, ones that deal with uncomfortable subjects and won't get offended easily. That kind of horror, if you like the dark and twisted stuff, this one's definitely worth your time. So absolutely give this one a look.
Want to snag a wolf? You gotta outwolf him.
Hunter x Hunter is a 2020 psychological horror movie, written and directed by Sean Linden. It stars Devon Sawa, Camille Sullivan, and Nick Stahl. Joseph and his family live in the remote wilderness as fur trappers, but their tranquility is threatened when they think they're being hunted by a rogue wolf. So Joseph leaves his family behind to track it down.
Where did she say she found this?
Out in the woods.
Hello?
Jesus.
First off, this cast is incredible. Before seeing this, I wasn't familiar with Camille Sullivan. I knew who Nick Stahl was a little bit, but in 2020 when this came out was when you started seeing kind of a resurgence of his career and seeing him pop up in more and more things. And then you have Devon Sawa, who, yes, we all know him from movies back in the day, but as an adult, he hadn't done a ton prior to this as well. So it's really cool because all three of those stars have since this movie gone on to really do some amazing roles. And most recently, I saw Camille Sullivan in the new movie Shelby Oaks, which will be coming out in the next couple weeks. I was able to see it at Fantastic Fest, and I'm a huge fan of it. I think it's really, really good. But her role in it and the performance she gives in it is what really makes that movie work so well. Because just like this movie, she completely throws herself into the role, and the emotional journey that you go on with her is really special. But holy fuck, this movie's dark and twisted. It gets so messed up by the end of it. So it's not one of those movies that's a fun watch or a happy watch by any means, but instead a very bleak, dark, and uncomfortable horror movie that will mess with you, will stick in your head, but it's incredibly well done. Like I said, the cast is amazing. The way it's shot, it's fantastic. The setting, just everything about the way this is put together, the way the story unfolds, it slowly builds the dread and the intensity in this way where it isn't fast paced, but yet you're locked in and really glued into these characters and the situation. And that can be a tough balance because a lot of times if a movie is kind of slowly prodding along and building dread, it can get boring and kind of lose your interest. So if you're able to move this story along in a pronounced, deliberate way that is slow, but is impactful and captivating, well, then you did a damn good job with your movie, because I'm telling you, that's not an easy thing to accomplish. But this does as good of a job at that as you're gonna see. But this movie is haunting. It's disturbing. It's very horrifying, but really, really well done. But if that piques your interest and sounds like something you would be into, you definitely need to see it.
Tiempo de la fe se terminan rápido.
When Evil Lurks is a 2023 Argentinian horror movie, written and directed by Demian Rugna. It stars Ezekiel Rodriguez, Louis Dombrowski, and Emilio Vadovic. In a remote village, two brothers find a demon-infected man about to give birth to evil itself. So they try to get rid of the man, but merely succeed in helping to deliver the inferno. This is probably my favorite horror movie from the last 10 years. I wouldn't change a single thing about it. To me, it is just incredible. It's fun in this very perverse, dark, and disturbing way. Because it's one of those movies that just constantly surprises you, shocks you, leaves you with your jaw on the floor. But at the same time, it is incredibly haunting, really uncomfortable and disturbing. And that's such an amazing combination of things to accomplish. But I talked about Demian Rugna's other movie earlier, Terrified. And this one, to me, I think is just slightly better, but they're both just amazing movies, and yet they're so original and unique. The subject matter, the worlds, the way he builds out these universes in both movies is just incredible, because you don't see originality on this level very often. But this movie, even the way the world building is done, I mean, the rules and all the different things that are set in place, it doesn't take a long time to get there and get you to understand the situation and the universe that this is set in, so to speak, but yet it's complex and layered and there's so much to it. But there is pretty much no taboos or lines that this movie doesn't cross. It will disturb you in just about any way you can think of. This movie does it. But if you're a big fan of really disturbing horror movies that are also intriguing, interesting, complex, and enjoyable in that weird, perverse way that only horror fans can really understand, this is one you definitely have to see, because it's a movie that I highly, highly, highly recommend.
He's already here.
The Dark and the Wicked is a 2020 supernatural horror movie, written and directed by Brian Bertino. It stars Maren Ireland and Michael Abbott Jr. The story follows two siblings who are summoned back to their family farm to await the inevitable death of their father. But what initially appears to be a timeless ritual of loss and remembrance turns out to be something very different.
I found Mom's diary.
What if she saw something out there? Told y'all not to come.
It's so funny because there's only so many ways I can describe each one of these, and I try my best to not just be a broken record, but a lot of the same things you would say about most of the movies on this list, you would say about this. It's bleak, it's dark, it's disturbing. It is definitely got imagery and things that will haunt you and stick with you. It's extremely twisted, but in a phenomenal way. I am such a big fan of Brian Bertino's work. It was cool at Fantastic Fest seeing him talk about his movies and stuff, because he's got a new one coming out that's going to be on Paramount Plus called Vicious that I've talked about a few times. I did an individual review of it as well on the channel, so definitely check that out. But there's a lot of the same dark, twisted elements in Vicious that are in this and vice versa. So if you're a fan of this movie, definitely check out Vicious when it comes out in a week or so. I believe comes out like on the 16th, I think. But anyway, I mean, this movie is so good. Like, if you're a fan of horror that is very uncomfortable, very full of dread and disturbing and dark, with imagery and things that happen that absolutely will stick with you, Dark and the Wicked has got it all, and it does it incredibly well. So if you're looking for something horrifying, scary, disturbing, just dark and bleak, The Dark and the Wicked is absolutely one you should see.
Do you want to see my face?
Haunt is a 2019 horror movie, written and directed by Scott Beck and Brian Woods. It stars Katie Stevens, Will Brittain, and Lauren McLean. On Halloween, a group of friends encounter an extreme haunted house that promises to feed on their darkest fears. So I always like to end them on movies that are just more fun. Yes, scary, yes, disturbing, all that. But that they have a fun quality to them. And every year in this month, I have to talk about this movie at least once, because as far as recent horror movies that have the Halloween vibe and energy and haunted house and all those fun things from the Halloween season in them, this is one of the best, if not the best. I mean, I even have the ghost characters mask up behind me. I just think this movie is so entertaining, because I'm a huge fan of haunted houses, and this does a great job of showing that and having the mood and the look and the style of all of that, and does a great job of just giving you that haunted house feel. But then it gets dark and twisted and mean and creepy and scary and all of that, because it's very vicious and brutal and gory as well. It's also fun in the different directions that it takes, because it isn't a cookie cutter kind of slasher. There's more layers to it than that. There's definitely some interesting things, especially in the final act, that this does. But it's not an overly complex story. It is just a fun kind of Halloween time of year horror movie. But if you're looking for something that has that Halloween vibe, the atmosphere and all that, the fun of Halloween, while also actually being creepy and scary and disturbing, Haunt is definitely got you. And I just think it's a perfect pick for this Saturday night. So do yourself a favor this weekend, pick one of the movies off of this list, grab your popcorn and your candy, and enjoy! And like always, thank you so much for watching. Please crush that like button, and remember guys, horror can be fun! And I'll see you guys next time!